Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to NEWSROOM. I'm your host, Khalid. But today is the 30th of April 2024, last day of the month of April. But we've got lots to share with you. So without further ado, these are the stories that we'll be highlighting during the course of the show. We'll begin with the report that the Washington Post has put on media, as well as it has come in its publication, that unearths Narendra Modi's inner circle that is implicated in murder plots abroad. Now, there are many names that have been put in this. There are many conspiracies that have been unearthed, and there are many investigations that have been detailed in this report by the Washington Post, which talks about when Narendra Modi was even basking in the American adulation last year. An officer in India's RAW was laying final instructions to a hired hit team to kill one of Modi's most vocal critics in the United States, and of course I am referring to Pannu. This did not work out because the US CIA and the FBI unearthed this in the right time and prevented this from happening. But it unfortunately, Canada couldn't do it, and we saw Mr. Niger being assassinated, and we also saw Mr. Trudeau also openly naming India and the RAW agency as far as that is concerned. There are different details that have been unearthed in this Washington Post report, and this is what we are going to highlight in our first story. So do stay tuned. Our second story, ladies and gentlemen, today concerns the IMF that has approved 1.1 billion funding for Pakistan, as well as and has the immediate disbursement, which will be arriving by the end of the week. The board did meet in Washington on Monday and completed the second review under the SBA, the standby arrangement for Pakistan, allowing for bringing the rural disbursements under the arrangement to about $3 billion US dollars. Our Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has also expressed satisfaction of the release of this last financial tranche, and has said that the agreement with the IMF has proved to be crucial to prevent Pakistan from default during the 16 months of the tenure in the last government as well. Then we'll be talking about Pakistan's first digital city, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to open in Haripur. The agreement has been signed between the Special Technology Zones Authority and the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa Information Technology Board. The digital city will be the country's first tax-free zone, and all companies operating within it will be exempted from tax for the next 10 years. A wonderful news as far as Pakistan and its advancement in the IT sector is concerned. Then we'll be talking about the NASA's James Webb Telescope that has captured the most detailed infrared images ever taken of the Horsehead Nebula that you can see in the parallel window. One of the most majestic and recognizable objects in the night sky. And this was unearthed on Monday. The new observations show the top of the horse's mane, revealing for the very first time the small scale structures on the edge of the giant cloud of dust and gas. We all know it's located 13,000 light years away. You can imagine the advancement as far as the science is concerned in Pakistan. Let's come to our first segment, ladies and gentlemen, that concerns the Washington Post detailed report that we all read. If you haven't read, please go through it. That unearths Narendra Modi's inner circle that has been implicated in the murder plots abroad, and there are different countries, not just the United States of America. So we've been joined by two important guests. Both are in the studios. Let me introduce them to you one by one. The first is Naveed Aman Khan, senior analyst. Thank you very much, Naveed Saab, to have joined us. Our second guest is our famous Kashmiri Mujahid, Dr. Mujahid Gilani. Thank you very much, Dr. Saab, to have joined us. Let's begin with you, Naveed Saab. Naveed Saab, Prime Minister Narendra Modi was basking in the limelight of the US. The president had invited him. It was a grand affair, and it was publicized throughout the world. At the same time, there was also a hit being made on one of the most vocal critics of Narendra Modi, and I am referring to Pannu. This whole plot was unearthed by the FIA, by the CIA, and they stopped it before it could further happen. But there are some names that have come. Vikram Yadav, an officer in India's spy agency RAW, who sent the instructions to a hired team. Then him saying that this assassination is a priority. And of course we are talking of Gurpatwant Singh Pannu, and he gave his New York address according to officials and a US indictment. Also high-ranking RAW officials have been implicated, including the then RAW head that we will be highlighting during the course of this program as well. How important do you feel is this revelation by the Washington Post? Do you feel we already knew about it and only now do we read about it? And how important is the timing of it all, because the Indian elections are in full swing?
In fact, Khalid, the thing is this: if we talk about Modi and his politics, we need to understand his ideology and myth of his politics. The myth of his politics is based on Hindutva. He believes that Hindustan is the place where the Hindus live, and the Hindus have right to live in India, not the Muslims, the Christians, the Sikhs, the Parsis, and the other religions. So he says that the believers of the other religions, if they don't want to live in India, they need to quit India. And by this mythology or ideology, he has injected that hatred in the minds of the extremist Hindus of India, just to win their sympathies, and just to win their votes, because he believes that Hindus in India are in majority, and if he pleased Indian Hindus, he will have their votes and sympathies. So he has made it understand to Indian Hindus that he is the best leader for Hindus to save and safeguard their rights and their authority in the entire world, not only in India but also in the entire world, in the region. And he, during last 10 years of his rule, he started from Pakistan, and he now reached in Canada and America as well.
All right.
By then, I will finish it in a line. By then, Pakistan has been, highlighting that involvement of India in Pakistan's matters, and terrorism which was being led by India or RAW in Pakistan with the help of TTP and BLA. All those things have been carried out by Indian RAW and Indian spy people. 20 people in Pakistan have been targeted during the last couple of years, and now
and the Washington Post also mentions
that same thing, the same phenomenon has reached to Canada and America.
And it's just not Canada and America. Now, Dr. Mujahid Gilani, India's assassination plots in the US and Canada, as far as the report by Washington Post goes, are part of an expanding wave of aggression against dissident groups seeking protection in other countries. I will refer to Vikram Yadav's memo that the Washington Post has, part of which has been, printed by the Washington Post. It indicates that the Indian government was increasingly willing to disregard the sovereignty of the host nations and sent agents across borders to subdue political enemies. Now, whether it be Canada, the United States, and United Kingdom, Germany, and Australia, and there are proofs as far as that's concerned. Let's not go towards Pakistan, because that is another thing altogether. Let's talk about transatlantic, aggression and terrorism that has been going on. Doesn't this revelation lay bare the Indian malicious designs? But is this just the tip of the iceberg?
Very rightly said, Umar. I would actually like the phrase tip of the iceberg. See, what we knew about India previously as well, ever since 1947 till 2024, you need to understand the Indian heinous and nefarious designs haven't surfaced in 2024 or post 2019. If you remember, back in 1948, when India raised the question of Kashmir, the state of Jammu and Kashmir in the United Nations, Jawaharlal Nehru had actually termed Pakistan as an aggressor, as a raider, as somebody who didn't have the right to be inside or on the land of state of Jammu and Kashmir. So we begin from there. That is the lie that India has always put forward and put forth to the countries who are the movers and shakers of the world. Post 2019, and particularly referring to the report that you have, you're discussing in your program as well, it's very important to understand that India always wanted to go beyond its territories, geographical boundaries, and be it the strike, so-called strike that is on Balakot in 2019 February, And you see how Abhinandan was actually awarded and accoladed. And this is what goes beyond Pakistan as well. Be it Australia, I was going through a report by the Director General of Australian Intelligence Organisation agencies, who had actually quoted and who had actually mentioned Indian officials and authorities in the Indian High Commissioner Australia who were deported just because of their illegal involvement in different activities. And likewise, we understand that Canada and USA had also incremented India in different illegal involvements on their soil. We have evidences. We know of different names such as that of Paramjit Singh. We know of Avtar Singh Khanda. We know of Hardeep Singh Najjar as well, and we know the failed attempt that India tried to carry out in the United States on Gurpatwant Singh Pannu. These are names of the Khalistani leaders who are actually telling the truth and bringing to the world what the people of Khalistan, inshallah to be, and what the Sikh community outside India really want. But at the same time, we must understand that these are the voices of freedom, the very same voices that the people of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir also are. They are the voices of freedom as well. So combined together, we must understand that this is not only the two entities, this is not only the two factions. We must understand that these voices also live in Nagaland, these voices also live in Mizoram, in the other states of the Indian Dominion. And I would rather say that these are all occupied territories.
All right.
One thing which
I'd like to come to the next question before we do that. Naveed Aman Khan Sahab, there are two important names that have come up. The first is of Samant Goel, who was approved RAW chief at the time of the incidents that happened in the US and Canada, and his involvement has been assessed by the US intelligence agencies that he had approved these hits. Secondly, they also talk of Ajit Doval, who the US agencies say was probably aware of Raw's plans to kill the activists, but officials emphasize that no smoking gun evidence had been found as far as Ajit Doval is concerned. Neither Doval nor Goel have responded to the Washington Post's calls or text messages. A Western security official, while replying to a question on why India would risk attempting an assassination on US soil, said because they knew they could get away with it, quote unquote. Will this revelation have any impact on Indian politics or Indian policies, or will things be as normal?
I don't think it will impact on Indian politics because in a way it will impact, yes, because Indian Prime Minister Modi, he will continue pleasing his extremist Hindus that we are here to protect you from all those who are enemies of India. He believes in expansionism. To carry on this expansionism ideology, he swallowed in 2019 Kashmir, and now before this election he has given that slogan that he will capture Tivo Island from Sri Lanka forcefully. It shows that he believes in expansionism. So this is a tactic to please those extremist Hindus. Now he doesn't believe that Sikhs in a very big number are living in India and they are struggling for Khalistan. So he doesn't want to give that Khalistan to Sikhs. Those Sikhs who are struggling for Khalistan, he believes that they are the enemies of India. They are not enemies of India. They are struggling for their homeland, and their struggle is indigenous. And I think they are very successful in India and in Canada, in America as well. And they successfully, the Sikhs living in Canada and America has very successfully won the sympathies of the American and the Canadian governments as well. So India is feeling that pressure from America and Canada as far as the Sikh movement is concerned. That is why Indian government led by Modi and patronized by the raw chiefs, they are picking and choosing all those political leaders who are struggling for their independence from India. Either they are living in Canada or America or in any part of the world.
All right. Dr. Gilani, last year in September, Justin Trudeau, who's a Canadian Prime Minister, accuses Indian agents of being involved in the murder of a Sikh leader, Hardeep Singh Nijjar. He was shot outside a Gurdwara on the 18th of June in Surrey. Relations between both countries went into a tailspin. Canada withdrew 41 diplomats from India as a reaction because Modi's government threatened to revoke their legally protected status. Then we see that other countries are also, having the same issues as far as RAW is concerned. You talked about Australia. I'd like to add Germany and the United Kingdom to these as well. As far as the US is concerned, how they managed to nab it in the bud before Pannu could be assassinated was because of the alleged middleman Nikhil Gupta, who is described in an indictment by the US as an Indian drug and weapons trafficker enlisted to hire a contractor by the RAW agency, and Yadav and Gupta spent weeks trading encrypted texts about the plot to kill Pannu, according to this US affidavit. Hours after Nijjar, and I'm now making the connection with Canada, was gunned down in his car on the 18th of June, Yadav sent a video clip to Gupta showing Nijjar's bloody body slumped in his vehicle, according to the same indictment. I'm just quoting whatever the indictment or the report is saying. Does that mean that overt or covert operations against all such RAW agents continue to go on, and will the different governments in whose countries the RAW agents have been found to be involved in such various activities will do openly or discreetly such activities to curb them?
You see, I believe sovereignty of any country is very important, and that really doesn't involve being the mover and shaker of the world. I will be very honest about even the smallest countries of the world, they have their sovereignty and it should be respected. When we talk about United States, United Kingdom, or the P5 countries as such, Canada as well, we need to understand that these are the countries who are far superior and far above India as far as their economy is concerned, as far as the other growth mileages are concerned as well. So for once, I believe it was an excellent step taken by Canada. The sovereignty of their land, of their citizens, the self-respect, the life, the protection of it, all are very important. And the way Canada dealt with India was something that for once I believe India would remember for several decades to come. As far as UK or US are concerned, this is very important to pin as well. We understand Gurpatwant Singh lives. He lives and he still speaks the way he wants to. He speaks his heart out. But these was a failed attempt.
But I just want to add to it that there were other attempts also that have been unearthed that have not yet happened but had been planned.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I would actually go with this as Sir had just mentioned a few moments back about the several attacks that were carried out in Pakistan as well. You can understand that India wants to target all those voices that are going towards Indian dissension, be it on the Pakistani soil, be it anywhere in the world. But this is important to understand that anywhere in the world, be it the Indian officials, be it the Indian DAs, be it the Indian RAW personals, they need to be hanged for this. They need to be taken to task for this. For if they are not, I'm pretty sure that the sovereignty of any country in the world, based on what India's expansionist designs are, will not be respected.
But we all remember the CIA chief did go to India, but what happened as a result of that? Nothing has happened. All right, Naveed Saab, we have seen different revelations as far as Narendra Modi is concerned. His jingoistic agenda, his hegemonic designs, his Akhand Bharat, that is being saying all along to include many other countries in what he calls an area for the Hindus of the region. Then there are these allegations as far as transatlantic and regional terrorism are concerned. A recent report by Freedom House, which is a human rights organization, lists India amongst the world's practitioners of transnational repression, which is a term for government's use of intimidation of violence against their own citizens, dissidents, activists, journalists in other sovereign country. My question to you is, do such reports have any effect on Modi's agenda, or do you feel, in fact, Narendra Modi benefits from such reports politically inside of India?
Yes, definitely. he earns that political mileage from such reports, and he makes the Hindus understand that because of protection of their rights within India, he is making the other people unhappy and enemies, just to give that impression to the entire world that he is the only leader of India who can take care of the Hindus of India. Those are almost 900 million Hindus. And he says that he believes in expansionism. He doesn't believe in the divide of India. That is why he is crushing Sikhs in the entire world. He is having hot pursuit against Sikhs in the entire world. That is an impression which he is giving to his Hindu extremists. And with this impression, he will win their sympathies and he will win their
all right. So this is a political gain for Narendra Modi. Dr. Gilani, responding to questions raised by a Washington Post reporter at a news briefing last week, the Indian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Randhir Jaiswal said, and I'm going to quote names, that India was still investigating the allegations as far as the target killing is concerned, and that the Pannu case equally impacts our national security, quote unquote. He also said that targeting killings were not their country's policy. Also, in his few public remarks on the plots to kill Pannu and Nijar, this is what Narendra Modi said. If a citizen of ours has done anything good or bad, and I'm quoting what he said, if a citizen of ours has done anything good or bad, we are ready to look into it. He said in an interview with the Financial Times that was published in December of 2023. He said, quote unquote, our commitment is to the rule of law. US and Western security officials said it is unlikely that the RAW would have launched such operations without Narendra Modi having prior knowledge of it. Your comment?
To be really honest, if I put it into a nutshell, whether it's Narendra Modi or whether it's Ajit Dol or Amit Shah, I believe they're all together one. If it's Narendra Modi who knows it, if he doesn't, Amit Shah knows it. If Amit Shah doesn't know it, Ajit Dol knows it. It is a consent by all three of them. One, two. You see, this is a carrot and stick model. You need to tell the world we are very peace loving. You need to understand we want to be developing peaceful relations with our neighbors as well. And we know very well how peaceful India is with Pakistan, Nepal, Bangladesh, Bhutan or Sri Lanka. These are evident figures and media news that we have of the peaceful relationships that India has with its neighbors. And the other thing that we need to understand that India has been carrying out her nefarious designs on the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir as well. But on the other hand, India tells the G20 delegation, India tells various other delegations from the European countries that Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir is essentially very peaceful, the facade of normalcy that India has been portraying as well. So, culminating the answer to your question,
I'd like to add something to it. At a recent campaign rally in Rajasthan, Modi tells thousands of cheering supporters, today even India's enemies know this is Modi, this is the new India. The new India, he adds, comes into your home to kill you.
Oh, this is what we need to understand. I believe this
I'm just quoting
itself,
what he said. I'm not saying anything out of context.
This statement itself is a revealing statement that the world needs to take very seriously. India is essentially no more what it sees to the faces. We must look into the backside of it. We must look into the true picture, what India is actually doing. Not only within the mainland Indian dominion, also in the Indian legally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, but also beyond its geographical boundaries.
All right, Naveed, Aman Sahib, in Australia, 2 RAW officers are expelled in 2020 after authorities break up what Mike Burgess, who is the head of the Australian Intelligence Service, describes as a nest of spies. In Germany, federal police make arrests in recent years to rule out agents RAW had recruited within the Sikh communities. In Britain, RAW's surveillance and harassment of the Sikh population, especially a large concentration near Birmingham, became so egregious in 2014 and 2015 that MI5 delivered warnings to Goel. We are referring to the same who became the head of RAW later, who was then serving as the RAW's station chief in London. How do you see these revelations? Aren't they important enough for the world to understand what India has been up to?
Yes, Omar, this is very important. And this is a very negative development which we are now experiencing in the entire world, led by India and Indian spy agency. Pakistan has long been suffering and facing that terrorism sponsored by India and RAW in Pakistan. And Pakistan has been raising its voice on the international level, on UN and America, but they have never been paying attention towards Pakistan's voice. Now, that India, which started from Pakistan, now have entered to Europe and America and Canada. And they are targeting the nationals of the European countries and American or Canadian nationals, Indian, Canadian or Indian American nationals. This is a topic, or this is an issue to be taken in United Nations and to other forums as well. And all those countries which are facing such sort of attitude from India or RAW in their countries should also join hands and have a moot in any other country to discuss this issue, because this is an issue which is directly referring towards India. Because in every incident, India is involved and RAW is involved, either be in Germany or in Canada or America or Czech Republic or Pakistan, or even you can refer that case of Qatar, in which 8 Indian spies were arrested.
What happened at the end? Well, let's not go into details. Okay, we are a bit short of time. My last question to you, Dr. Gilani, comes as far as Pakistan's perspective is concerned. Pakistan has time and again given different dossiers to the United Nations, to different important countries in the West as far as India's involvement in Pakistan is concerned. They are malicious, they are aggressive designs in Pakistan is concerned. We still have a spy with us, and you know that very well.
True.
Do you feel incidents such as these, reports such as the Washington Post one, will prompt the West and UN to reinvigorate all the files that Pakistan has sent in the past?
I believe Pakistan stands vindicated as far as these reports are concerned, and these are not reports from any subcontinent source. They are in fact reports from the Western sources, and very reliable one as well. We must understand that if you actually go through all these reports back from the dead professor story, the EU Disinfo Lab, until this today in 2024, the stories that have unearthed, Pakistan has always been telling the world, has always been warning the world about Indians' nefarious designs. And apart from the terrorism that Pakistan has been facing from India, be it paid, be it direct, in either cases, it is the world that has to pay the price. So you see, a destabilized world, a destabilized South Asia, a burning Kashmir conflict is never in favor of a peaceful world. So this is something that the world needs to look into. A destabilized Kashmir or a destabilized South Asia is not in favor of anyone, be it UK, US, or the P5 movers and shakers of the world. I believe Pakistan did its best. I believe Pakistan needs to continue its efforts the way it has been providing dossiers with evidences in the past as well as in this present case as well. Pakistan stands vindicated, and the world will listen to it if we continue hammering it all together.
Thank you very much to the both of you, my guest Naveed Aman Khan Saab and with Dr. Mujahid Gilani, to have joined us, to have talked to us about this very important report. And this is not a Pakistani dossier, this is a Washington Post report that of course unearths many details that we knew of, but not in such precise facts and figures and names, with names and sequences as well. So thank you very much to have highlighted on those, and to also say, as you said, Pakistan stands vindicated on what it has been saying all along as far as India is concerned. Let's come to our second story, ladies and gentlemen, and that concerns the IMF that has approved the $1.1 billion US funding for Pakistan. On Monday, the executive board of the International Monetary Fund approved this disbursement, this immediate disbursement of approximately $1.1 billion US. Dr. Usman Chohan, he's a leading economist, joins us online. Usman, thank you very much to have joined us. The IMF, I just said in my intro, has approved for immediate disbursement this $1.1 billion, this last final tranche of the standby arrangement with Pakistan. How important is this approval in your point of view for stabilizing, for strengthening Pakistan's economy?
Thank you very much for having me on your show. As always, it's a pleasure. The important thing is that this final tranche has been given. It is important for two reasons. One, it does help in boosting the foreign reserve count, but it isn't that significant amount in that regard. The more significant contribution is that it gives a good signal that Pakistan was able to successfully complete all tranches worth of progress in a standby agreement, which then paves the way to assure the world that Pakistan has managed to navigate and weather a difficult storm. So the signaling effect, I believe, is even more important than the actual sum.
All right. Wonderful. In a statement, the IMF says Pakistan's determined policy efforts under this standby arrangement of 2023 have brought progress in restoring economic stability. It says moderate growth has returned, external pressures eased, inflation begun to decline. Would you highlight some of the policy efforts?
Yes, I mean, there's a credit goes to several different ministries. All stakeholders, in fact, deserve some portion of the credit because it was quite sweeping in scope, the program, what it required. But the primary areas where I think it is laudable is that work was done in terms of curtailing the circular debt and working on the energy sector. Another one was taking a good hard look at the state-owned enterprises. A third was the management of the current account. So the difference between exports and imports, there were secondary consequences of and significant ones, we know that, but the current account has been kept under some measure of control. Similarly, strong efforts were made on revenue mobilization, so part of the fiscal deficit, and at the same time expenditures are being looked into. So in every aspect of what you would look at as your macroeconomic model, some work was done. Credit also goes in particular to the caretaker government for just keeping their heads down and working hard. And now this government has continued that work. And so it's a very good sign that so much work is done in so many things, pace by pace, and we need that continuity.
Well, speaking of continuity, our Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif on the one hand expresses satisfaction over the release of the last financial tranche, but also talks about the tough decisions taken for economic security for Pakistan, which are yielding positive results. He says taking loan is not a success. Our success will when we will be able to clear it. In that context, what kind of decisions, tough or otherwise, are needed to take our economy in the right direction?
Well, we continue to struggle above all with the cancer of inflation, as does much of the world. So inflation is one that still needs to be reined in, which is to say that even though we have quarter-on-quarter or year-on-year comparators that would suggest inflation coming down, it still remains high. And that's not just true of Pakistan. The United States also had a shocking inflation result. So inflation is a very big one. And so monetary tools are the first area of attack on that, where you have the interest rate, you have the money supply, the banking system, all of those things. But at the same time, the fiscal elements are also, I think, where tough decisions are required. Revenue collection is not easy. I mean, we are looking at trying to expand or widen the tax net. I think that width is important rather than the depth of the tax, because the ordinary taxpayer, somebody already in the tax net, can only be squeezed so hard. So there's tough decisions on that. And I think the most politically contentious one is always the reconciliation of the budget, which is to say, curtailing your expenditures, because where are you going to find the cuts and who are you going to get the cuts from? That's where I think any society has the biggest struggle, and I think that's what the Prime Minister has foremost in his mind with respect to taking tough decisions to take our economy in the right direction. So I think the expenditure side and the fiscal element, I think this is the big question now.
Now, Usman, I now refer to the IMF statement that was taken out after the last tranche was released. And it talks about emphasizing on the continued projection of the most vulnerable sections of the Pakistani society, accelerating structural reforms to achieve strong long-term inclusive growth, advancing the reforms of state-owned enterprises. Of course, it talks about the significant challenges ahead as well, in which it says Pakistan needs to capitalize on its hard-won stability. It talks about preserving with sound macroeconomic policies and structural reforms to create stronger, inclusive and sustainable growth, and continued external support, the IMF report says, is also going to be critical. What kind of reforms are we looking at long-term and short-term?
You're absolutely right that the spokesperson identified many different things, and the two things that struck out to me are that climate resilience was an important factor that was mentioned, and governance was also said that you need to work on your anti-corruption and institutional framework. So I think that reform is always a tricky one and an important one, but the state-owned enterprises seems foremost in the IMF's mind, and as you are well aware, Pakistan is working hard at looking at a host of them. time and is progressing at various levels of speed, but quite fast overall, in terms of recognizing that the burden of the state-owned enterprises under the umbrella of the IMF stipulations is a good time to get rid of these, because they simply didn't do what they were expected to do over a long horizon. So that's an important area. In addition, the portion of the statement that said continued external support will be critical, that is, I think, one thing that we have to keep in mind, that when they are projecting out what will be required for Pakistan to achieve that long-term inclusive and sustainable growth, they are looking at the need for stakeholders from outside, not just from inside. So we have to keep that in mind, that in their mind it's like that, and that we therefore have to keep in mind the relationship that Pakistan has with the international financial institutions, as well as how much reform needs to be done domestically on the issues we've discussed.
What about the fiscal reforms? What is the IMF expectation from Pakistan as far as those are concerned? It talks about a market-determined exchange rate to absorb external shocks and more inclusive growth as well. From the fiscal domain, what does that imply?
So the exchange rate is a monetary question, or it's not even monetary, it's just a separate item, where you look at how the rupee has worked. And historically, Pakistan's currency has depreciated about 7% a year, but because management of the currency kept it at a certain level for a prolonged period, the ultimate drops tend to be very shocking, very, very large depreciations, and that makes it hard to plan for business, also makes it hard for you and me, for the consumers, because we can't keep in mind what pace is changing in terms of at what pace the currency will change. So they say go for a market determined rate, but the currency markets are complex, because on the one hand you saw the tough action taken by the government last year, which was very good, and how the speculation in the rupee was effectively stopped. It was a very impressive effort. And at the same time, a global currency is traded 24 hours around the world. So there are also speculative attacks or other risks that emerge from outside. So having a market determined thing sounds nice, but we will have to maintain some degree of oversight and protection of the rupee, because it is vulnerable to larger forces. Plus, there are global shifts that are happening where other currencies are changing in value, inflation rates are different, energy crises are erupting. And so currency is one that I only partially would agree with the IMF, because yes, having a market determined rate in principle is good. Actually, you will have to still make sure that speculation doesn't occur or attacks on your currency don't occur. So it's a mixed bag. And insofar, on your other part of your question about inclusive growth, the IMF's narrative has changed substantially over the last 25 years, where previously it was very much on the free market stuff, but since the West itself has divested itself or disabused itself of free market ideology to a considerable degree, inclusivity has become a bigger part of it. And I think that's a good thing, because in Pakistan, decision making and implementation, as well as the consequences of decisions, are shared things, shared experiences. So having inclusivity in terms of people reaping the rewards as well as making the investments is a very important thing. So I think that when the IMF stresses inclusivity, it is making an important point. And we also must make sure that our very large population, which is still a fast growing population, has a stake in our economic success, and that the rewards pass down to all segments of society.
Usman, the State Bank of Pakistan has left its key policy rate unchanged at 22% for the 7th consecutive time, and it has met with market expectations. The IMF on this very point says that the State Bank of Pakistan's tight monetary policy stance remains appropriate until inflation returns to more moderate levels. It talks about further improvement in the functioning of the foreign exchange market that we have already discussed, and supporting competitiveness and growth. How do you see this decision by the State Bank of Pakistan, and how do you see also the statement by the IMF?
Oh, this is an excellent point. So the State Bank of Pakistan, particularly since 2021, has become a very, very important player, an even more important player than it used to be. And that's not just on the currency side, but also in terms of regulation and oversight, and then also in terms of the interest rate. Pakistan's interest rate is very high by world standards, and that's partly because our inflation rate is very, very high. So to mitigate that, the cost of borrowing or the discount rate is maintained high, but you cannot have economic economic recovery, genuine economic recovery at 22% interest rate, because it is simply not lucrative enough to undertake productive economic activity. It's much better to just park your money in the bank and sit around and get 22% annually for doing nothing. That is part of the reason why the state bank has a tough choice. The tough choice is between having its growth, the hot part, the acceleration of the economy after this difficult period, by lowering the interest rate. That'll spur activity, but at the same time doing at least part of the inflation curtailment through the interest rate, because our inflation numbers are still too high. They're high all around the world. So I think the SBP cannot make a clear decision. It is decided for now to keep it at 22, but in the long run, of course, no society can proceed at a permanent 22% interest rate, because that means that it's just too difficult to do anything ever. So we don't want that situation. With the timing of the SBP rate, some people have speculated that it is about time it comes down, but the IMF, as you correctly mentioned, has said no, not until there's serious change on the inflation side. But the inflation side is not entirely determined locally, because the energy crisis, the terrible things happening in the Middle East, all of these uncertainties, they make it so that inflation is not at satisfying levels just about anywhere. And that is true for us. Plus, we have a big cost push side. We have a supply chain issue. We have value addition issues. We have storage issues that impact the prices of things. Now, that means that we can...
Last question, Usman, last question, and I want a short answer. Finance Minister Mohammad Aurangzeb says Pakistan is now eyeing a longer and larger economic bailout package with the IMF. The fund says it will support formulating a new economic program for Pakistan if the government seeks one. How should Pakistan move forward in that direction?
Ideally, I would not want us to be dependent on the IMF, but it appears that the current circumstances necessitate a continued engagement with the IMF, not just for having the foreign exchange part, but also for having the impetus for reforms. So I think that we will go ahead with the program, and if we make the most of it, then in subsequent years we won't require IMF assistance, and that's what I'm hoping for the future beyond this.
All right, let's stay cautiously optimistic, and as our Prime Minister also said, the day when we'll be able to repay everything will be the day that will be of a huge sigh of relief as far as Pakistan is concerned. Thank you very much, Usman Chohan, leading political economist, to have joined us to discuss about the IMF latest tranche as well as Pakistan's relationship with the IMF. Let's come to our last two stories very, very quickly. The first is on Pakistan's first digital city, where under the Special Investment Facilitation Council, otherwise known as the SIFC, a new arrangement worth 8 billion rupees has been signed for the establishment of a Pakistan digital city in Haripur. This agreement has been signed between the Special Technology Zones Authority, the STZA, and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa Information Technology Board. This city is going to be Pakistan's first tax-free zone. All the companies operating within it will be exempted from tax for the next period of 10 years. About 4,000 IT startups can be established in the city, which spans over 11 acres of land, will be fully operational by the year 2026. It is hoping that it will not only increase the IT exports to over $50 million, 50, but will also provide employment opportunities to IT graduates. 30% of work on the digital city has already been completed, and investment of 1,642 million rupees has also been made in the city under NESPAC and National Logistics Cell. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about the James Webb Telescope that belongs to NASA, that has captured the most detailed infrared images ever taken of the Horsehead Nebula. This is, of course, you can see in the parallel windows as well, one of the most majestic and recognizable objects in the night sky. The new observations show the top of the horse's mane, revealing for the first time the small scale structures that you might be able to recognize also in the window on the edge of the giant cloud of dust and gas. This nebula is located around 1,300 light years away in the constellation Orion the Hunter. The iconic silhouette of a horse's head and neck rises from what looks like churning waves of interstellar foam. What a beautiful era this is, to have these scientific discoveries emanate from different sectors, and us advancing in the realm of understanding our past, the past of the universe, and revealing more of what the universe has to show us and has in store for us. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we come to an end of today's news. We will see you inshallah tomorrow with news story segments that pertain to us, you in Pakistan. Stay safe. Allah Hafiz.